I'm Shwa, and you are listening to Light Up with Shwa, a weekly podcast to open our hearts and minds on a journey with me. My name is Shwa, and I'm the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shwa on conscious living and parenting. I hope you already are watching or listening to this podcast, and if you are not, please subscribe, rate, review, and share. My guest today is Daisy Khan. She's Skyping with us from New York. This is part one with her. She is an accomplished and ambitious woman. So find out about her on this podcast, and also to learn more about her, go to www.daisykhan.com. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and greetings, Daisy.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking our time. I really appreciate. I've been looking for you. I am so glad to be finally able to speak to you. And would you please introduce yourself for our audience, who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Daisy Khan, and I founded WISE, Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality. Mm-hmm. We are a woman-led organization that does a lot of peace-building work, interfaith relations, and human equality, which includes women's rights. And we, are not afraid to take bold steps where we need to take bold steps to create a harmonious environment for all of us.
What do you mean by bold steps?
Well, there are many issues in the world that require setting the record straight on certain things. And so in my faith community, for instance, for many years, I have seen the injustices against women. Mm-hmm. And I had to be very bold in addressing those by looking at our scriptures and seeing why women's rights are being violated and how we can, redress those by basically, looking at the scripture ourselves and providing our own opinions on it and interpreting it ourselves and being bold about it. But bold in the sense that the very first bold move that was made by the prophet's wife. She asked the prophet, why is God only addressing men in the Quran?
Thank you.
So that was a very bold step for her.
So you are an author?
Yes.
And you are a speaker, mm-hmm. and in addition to whatever else you do. So I want to bring our attention to these two very new books. The Wise Up, let's talk about Wise Up and then come to your Born
memoir.
Yes, memoir. Mm-hmm. So talk about Wise Up. That is a very rich book, and I have been still reading and going through it. Mm-hmm. Talk about that, please. What is the goal for having that book?
Since 9/11, American public has been asking Muslims, why don't we speak out and against terrorism, and where are the Muslim voices? The truth is we have been speaking out. All of us, at least the vast majority of Muslims that I know who are active in the community, have condemned, have made statements, have demonstrated, have done whatever they could do within their own, power to basically condemn terrorism and extremism. But somehow it doesn't seem to reach the general public because oftentimes these condemnations do not get reported in the press. So the American public then feels that Muslims are silent and complicit, and so we're doing nothing. It's been more than 15 years now, and I felt that the time had come for us to do collective action. All the things that we have been saying for all the years, put it together in one place, but also understand that a lot of the fear of Islam comes from ignorance of Islam. And not only ignorance, but distortion of Islam, which is being promoted not only by the Islamophobes, but the extremists themselves. Mm-hmm. So Wise Up is our initiative where we brought together 72 voices, 72 authors, scholars, activists.
I'm showing the book.
And if you turn it around in the back, you will see how many contributors we have.
Yes.
I mean, it's
and you can see reading.
Yeah, and it's a remarkable tool, and it's meant to aid people. It's meant to aid politicians, ordinary folks, ordinary citizens, interfaith allies who want to advocate on our behalf, don't know how to advocate. So it's basically us telling our story, defining ourselves in our terms, showing our history in America, how long we've been here, who we are, the challenges that we face, how we are contributing to America. So there's an entire section of notable American Muslims.
Yes, I
every morning you're having your Chobani yogurt. Understand that there's a Muslim refugee who was behind that. And, while you're sitting there watching football or baseball, understand that a lot of these players are Muslim. And if you are watching the Dr. Oz show, understand that Dr. Oz is a Muslim of Muslim heritage. And so we wanted to let people know that Muslims are also contributing to the social fabric of America. So then the second section of the book deals with how to distinguish Islam, the religion that Muslims practice.
That's very important.
That's very important from what the extremists are doing and how they're exploiting Islam. And just like Jeff Sessions just exploited, a verse out of the Bible and said the Bible told me this, and he was taken out of context, and there was so much pushback in the Christian community. Similarly, we're also showing the general public now how Muslims are pushing back at these extremists' exploitation of our text. And then the third section of the book goes directly into how to prevent and how to insulate community from harm. And it has a beautiful section on parenting.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
yes,
and a section on how to create resilient communities, how to intervene if somebody's having a problem, how to understand the vulnerabilities.
So it's like a manual. It's a manual for anybody to reference to and, find out anything related to Islam, Muslims. And can they connect?
Also more than that. It's more than just for Muslims, because now you have the same issues permeating in other communities. So you have a lot of vulnerable people that are being recruited into gangs, into white supremacy, and a lot of them are innocent, ignorant, going online, falling into the trap. And so we want people to understand this tool can also be used by other communities.
Exactly.
I mean, I have already had teachers tell me, oh my God, I want to use this bullying section and how to be a good bystander or how to not counter hate in my classes.
Actually,
I want to teach that in my
that's a
class.
very good point. I want you to, I will like to stress on it that it is a tool for everyone. How can we get hold of this book or manual if people want to
order it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be ordered online at www.wiseupreport.org.
Okay.
And you just place an order, and it's $30, and it'll be shipped to you right away.
Okay. And is there any other place? Are these going to be in libraries? What other projects are you doing with that? I think you...
So Wise Up book, when it came out, is now being turned into a campaign. And the campaign means we go out there into different communities. We do town hall dialogue. So if anybody wants to invite us to do a town hall dialogue around the content of the book, we're happy to go into any communities. We are doing a congressional briefing on July 17th.
Okay.
And going in front of members of Congress, giving every member of Congress his copy. Wonderful. Or her copy, and we are sitting down with them and showing them how, the rhetoric that politicians use affects communities directly. The negative rhetoric against communities, increases hate crimes, discrimination, and bullying, and all kinds of things that we have seen an increase. And most importantly, it creates a divide between communities and polarization within our community. So we don't want politicians to securitize our communities because we are law-abiding citizens of this country. And so we want them to treat us equally.
Yep. So that's a very significant move to be able to put in place that you are going to do on 17th of July. And
then we're going to do trainings in the future.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
how can we train?
Trainings.
Yes.
Targeted trainings for communities, for teachers, but also trainings for attorney generals, people that are at the front lines who are confronted by these issues. We want to train them and equip them. So far, we've been doing mostly town hall dialogues, getting out into communities, meeting people, and we're getting a lot of feedback from that.
Okay.
For us, it's a pilot to see what is the need. Okay. And so this is what the people are coming back to us and saying, we need lesson plans, we need training materials, we need curriculum. So the demand is huge. And we are a small organization. We can only take on so much. So our plan is to now seriously look at creating training materials for targeted groups of people. So, for instance, we had one gentleman who was in the armed forces, served overseas, came back, saw this, and said, wow, this is amazing. I just wish we could use this for cultural competency before people go overseas. Because they're ignorant of the culture, they're ignorant of the religion, they make mistakes, they're at the front lines. So he suggested that we make a cargo pant version, a small, tiny version. So when people are deployed and they're on the streets and they're interacting with people, they should know, they should be more effective by having more knowledge and having information. So that's something that we're doing, but it only came from when we met with a person and they recommended that.
That's wonderful. So you are encouraging people to interact with this project of yours and give you feedback. That's what it is. Is there
It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. We're not here to preach.
Yeah.
We are here to provide the tool, but also people tell us.
Get the feedback and see how you
what they need.
Yeah. So if somebody like me who is already into, actively participating and conducting and leading organizations in interfaith, how can I use? Do I have to take your permission? How do I do that?
No, if people want to use it for educational purposes, like if people want to use certain parts of the book for educational purposes, they can. They just purchase the book. They have the right to do that. The only thing is we do have 72 contributors in the book, and we have copyrights with everybody. So as long as you're using it for educational purposes, not for financial fulfillment, people can use it. But if you want to use it more like to create something out of it, then you just have to work with us and you become a partner and then you pursue it, that way. Because we also want to see the usefulness of it.
Yes, definitely.
If people come and say, I'm going to create a training material for this section because I have the time, I can do that. We just work together on that.
That would be wonderful. That's a good way. It has flexibility. So that's wonderful. Okay. So, so far, can you talk a little bit about feedback? What kind of feedback you have received so far?
Nothing but positive feedback. The problem is everybody wants more. People are telling us you need to digitize this. You need to now create a digital platform so that this information can get out there. It's just a matter of resources. If we had all the money in the world, we'd be able to do so much with this.
So are you still, you're welcoming the funds? I mean,
of course, yeah. If there's anybody listening and they are interested in pushing this out, into different sectors of communities, this has to be online. The book itself is very valuable for people who are readers, who like the hard copy. But there's so much content in here that if it's digitized, it could be on Facebook, it could be on Instagram. And so, there are some incarcerated people that have seen this, that have been recruited, by extremist groups like ISIS, that are looking at this, and they're also urging us that it needs to be digitized and put into small little videos. Because we have so much research. We have so much research in here of how people get recruited, of why people join, that it's also useful for people who are fighting, the white supremacy groups, people who are fighting gangs, because the thinking and the logic is the same.
So there you go. We
have to leverage off of one another, because although people might think that white supremacy is different from ISIS type of supremacy, the ultimate goals and their thinking and their logic is the same. Us versus them. We are the pure ones. Everybody else is impure. We will make Islam great again. We will make America great again. We will make white people great again. The thinking is the same exact thinking. And they rewrite history, and so there's an entire section in the book which talks about the foundation of the ideology. It's a honeycomb, black
I saw that.
Gray.
Beautiful.
If you see that, and you share that with white supremacist groups,
Yeah.
and you share that with people, that it's the same thing, only different language. So,
in fact, with your permission, I
of
will
course,
like
please,
to show you the audience who are watching.
Right.
And if they're listening, they can go and watch.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would, from there, it's a good segue to go into parenting chapter that you have in here. And that is really very concise, to the point, and very, which page was it? I think I saw that. It was quite conspicuous.
Yeah, I will find it in a few seconds.
Yeah, I did see that. It's a huge, big...
Yeah, here it is. So this is how we laid it out.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Beautiful.
It's so anti-Western sentiment. That's what ISIS will tell you.
Yep.
This translates as anti-immigrant sentiment. But the white supremacists, that's what it is. Pessimism about the state of the world, apocalyptic narrative, a rejectionist and fanatical. Everybody else
Amazing.
is crazy.
No,
Us versus them, rewriting history, and neo-interpretation of scripture, which is what all these groups are doing. So
there's a commonality in them.
There's a commonality. It's the same foundation. Only they use different tactics, and the language that they use and the ideology that they use is different.
Yes.
And also we show how they are a branding machine.
Oh, yeah, this page was very informative, because, you know, you put everything in one place and it's easy to compare and follow.
Right. But that's why we have to digitize this, because right now it's in a book.
Yes,
Imagine if it was digitized and you could share this with everybody.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
I think that's a very good plan. I wish you all the best in that.
Thank you. Just pray for the donors to come and fall. Some angels can fall out of the sky.
I am sure it will. It will happen, and it will, materialize soon. I'm sure there are already people who are supporting and doing that, but we need more. I understand that. So, okay. Let me get to my list of questions a little bit.
Your parenting section.
Yes. I wanted to talk about the parenting section from the book, The Wise Up. The person, there's another author. Talk about before you were into interfaith. What were you doing before? How did you get into interfaith? And then we can get into this. Interfaith was, I would say that I am a product of interfaith, because although I was born in a Muslim home, I was sent to Catholic school. Like many people in the subcontinent go to these Christian missionary schools. So I had Hindu teachers. I climbed trees with Sikh girls, and we bought freshwater pearls from the Buddhist, and we were always told that we were from the Lost 10 tribe of Israel. So at the age of 16 or 15, I landed in America in a 100% Jewish neighborhood. And so I feel that, living in a multi-religious and multicultural environment, that was my worldview, celebrating multiple cultures, living in a very, coexisting with different religions. So already my worldview is very much, was shaped by my childhood. And then when I came to America, I found myself in a Jewish neighborhood. So I had, directly interacted with people of all religions, all great world religions. I read in your book. So we'll talk about that too.
So like real experience. So I think that's why I say to people, personal relationships are very important, because it's about the experience that you have with individuals. So it's really important.
There I would like to, interrupt you about, before we get into the other questions about parenting, how can parents make their children more open to other faiths and cultures, as you were? So what couple of things that you can mention that people or parents can encourage to do?
Yeah. So I think in the context of America, it's really important for parents, and you will see in our parenting section, Surya Deen talks about why it's so important to expose your children to social, kind of like expand their social circle beyond the family and beyond the immediate community. Because, when you are socially comfortable with other groups, not only do your own life gets enriched, but you also become deeply tolerant and can, become a product who can create harmonious coexistence. And we see a lot of younger generation is very open generation because they have gone to school with people of different religions and this thing. So, but in areas and pockets of communities where you don't have that, you have to make an extra effort. So, take your kids to the YMCA, let them be part of a certain club where they're intersecting or interacting with athletics, with other people of other religions. So they have relationships. So it's only when you actually build relationships with people can you not demonize that people ever. It's true. Hard for me to demonize an entire group because I always remember my own friends.
That's true.
And so building those deep friendships, understanding people's different ways, acknowledging the holidays and why they celebrate them. That to me is it remains with you for the rest of your life.
And this should be applicable for all faiths and all religions.
It should be applicable to all faiths. So, for instance, Muslim community is a small community, and oftentimes people of different religions ask me, "What should we do?" And I said, "Find a local Muslim neighbor. Like, go and seek out your neighbor." And they would be so happy to get to know you, but they're afraid that you may not even want to get to know them. And share a dinner with them, get their kids to, play with one another.
Would you encourage people going to the worship houses?
They can go to each other's houses of worship, but sometimes it's easier to just build trusting relationships over a meal. Just in people's
homes. Have them
homes.
For tea and
get to know them.
The chai is one of the very major Asian
breaking bread together. The ancient way of getting to know somebody. Just break the bread and have a cup of coffee or tea, whatever's comfortable, and just get to know them as human beings.
Okay. So this chapter in your Wise Up, that whole big huge book that you have.
The most important thing that I learned from this, and although I am not a parenting specialist, I have a lot of families that have children that, especially interfaith type of families. So the one thing I learned from Surya Deen was she talks about in this section how we need to move away from transactional parenting to transformational parenting. And transactional is very top-down, where you lay down the rules, which was the old-fashioned way of raising children. And transformational parenting is more about, providing increased communication and getting to know your child at the level of the child, and providing complete unconditional love, supporting them in their needs, and really listening to them. And the reason for this is because of the world we live in. And she makes the case for transactional parenting. You were the only influence for your child. You were the primary influencer. There was no other influence. Your child, you could determine what your child would watch on TV, who they would speak to on the phone. That's not the case anymore. Everything has shifted. Your child has access to internet. Your child has complete access to other things, social media, and you don't even know who they're communicating with. And if you don't build a trusting relationship with your child and you don't become the influencer or the main influencer, there are other influences that can take over your child's life. And that's what's happening in America to a lot of children right now who are succumbing to external pressures where they don't have a solid relationship. Oftentimes people tell you, we have issues, when you hear of suicide or you hear of gun violence or you hear of, these people who go on shooting sprees, oftentimes there's a breakdown in the family, or there's some kind of trauma, that child's needs were not met. They didn't have a trusting relationship, and then they act out and they just go and kill a whole bunch of people because they're angry. And so she talks about how important it is to have a very trusting relationship and to listen to your child, to over-listen. And so parenting has to shift in the way we've done it in the old days.
Wonderful. So let's say for our audience, so major takeaways from this chapter would be, from your point of view?
So first of all, unconditional love, because your child needs that. Provide a very safe environment, because safety is the core of what parenting is. You have to provide safety for your child. So which means safety net. You have to be there for your child, at all times. And third is to really understand the talent of your child. And in other words, many parents who come from certain parts of the world insist that their child become a doctor or this thing. And your child might be leaning towards being an artist. So understand your child's talent and nurture that talent. And then empower your child to stand on your own feet.
Number 4. Audience, take notes. This is important. This is very important. It's very dear
and
to
over-communicate. Not under-communicate.
Okay.
In other words, create a healthy environment where the child can tell you what the issues are, and just, instead of blaming and shaming them, communicate with them and try to explain to them why you are worried about what they shouldn't do.
Excellent. And one more that you said earlier, because I was bringing again the same points. The last one we can say for now is listening.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's what you mentioned in your talk a few times. And I have found this with all my guests, that doesn't matter who I talk to, majority of them said, you have to listen.
Yeah.
Listening skills. Listening is important. And you just said that too. So I would really like to say that we need to listen. We all are learning, but we need to pay attention to it.
Yeah. Listening and creating boundaries. So the other thing is that you do have to create boundaries. And because boundaries are important, every child wants to know what the rules are. They need to have a set of boundaries. Like if you go out of your lane, you will get into a crash, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So the lane is like a boundary. So then parents also have to set the boundary. So one of the things that she talks about is, she says that we need to create boundaries on social media. Like, what can you not have access to? Like, I want to know what app you're on. That's a boundary. So you let the child know, the reason I want this is because I don't want you to be endangered. I don't want you to have access to somebody who might be a predator. So let them know what your fear is, what your concern is, but in that way they'll know it's not coming from a place of, they're just being authoritarian, because kids think they're always right, and really that they are concerned about you. So
I'll ask you in this, I have so much to ask you, and I thank you for your time again. I just want to ask in this same realm that we are talking about. So I understand you don't have your children of your own, but you have children, and you have, nieces and nephews, and you have been dealing with children, and you have this chapter in your book. So you are quite, I would say knowledgeable and experienced.
Yeah.
Tell me, so what would you tell other parents? Are children, do you own your children, or are they... or you are just a source of bringing them in this world? Yeah.
So, first of all, I think that somehow motherhood is defined by, you birthing life, bringing life into this world. So I wanted children as badly as everybody else. But I didn't succeed. And I think destiny intervened and said, no, this is not the plan for you. Although I still imagine what my children would be like. I imagine them. I actually can see them.
Wow.
I imagine that they're a composite of this and a composite of that. But, we have a saying in our tradition that a child is a blessing, but a mother who has a child is like has a blessing, but not having a child is mercy. So in other words, God has mercy on you, because raising children is not easy.
I read this sentence in your book. See, I read it well.
It's not easy.
Yes.
And so I was freed up from that responsibility. So I could do other things in my life that I would not have had the time to do. So I was blessed in that way, in the sense that God was merciful to me and said, you have many other people that I need you to take care of. So because I was freed up, I was able to initiate a lot of programs for my community. One of them was called Muslim Leaders of Tomorrow, cultivating the next generation of leaders, empowering them, bringing them together. And, I have to say, I'm very proud. A lot of them are leaders currently shaping the discourse in America. And, initially we connected them. Otherwise, they probably would not have known about one another. And so nurturing is part of motherhood. And so whether you nurture your own child or you nurture some other child or you nurture other people's children, that is what to me motherhood is all about. So I took it and I applied it to my community.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I think you had a bigger role to play, I guess. Thank you for watching part 1 with Daisy Khan. Please stay tuned for part 2 with her as well. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me through this exciting episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode of Light Up with Shwa.